America, we gotta get back to doing what's expected of us as free citizens in this democracy. That means being tolerant, being respectful, staying informed, and being engaged. I'm former Congressman Joe Walsh. Follow me here and join the millions of Americans who are renewing their social contract with each other. The social contract, it's on us. You know, there are certain things as Americans we just have to say we do not allow here. There are certain things as a free people in this country, as long as we remain a free people in this country, that we cannot and must not ever accept. One of those is troops, American troops, on our streets against our citizens. That doesn't happen here. That happens in dictatorships. That happens in authoritarian regimes. We don't do that here. We don't put the military on our streets, on American soil, against American citizens. We don't do that here. Our military does not engage in law and order and law enforcement on our streets against our citizens. Again, North Korea, Russia, China, any old banana republic throughout history, authoritarians, dictators do this kind of thing. Not here in America. We cannot normalize this. We cannot accept this. Not here. The Marines on our streets, not here. A governor calls in the state's National Guard for specific emergencies. That can happen. But our Marines, our military, being used by the President of the United States to engage in law and order against American citizens, that doesn't fucking happen here. We must not normalize it. We must not ever accept it. This scene playing out of DC last night, show me what you got, Keith. Look at this. Where is this? Look at that scene. Where is that? What country is that in? That's Washington, D.C. last night, outside Union Station last night. That can't happen here. That can't be allowed here. Military vehicles patrolling our streets? It's the kind of shit you see in movies in other countries. But in a free country, in a free society here, we don't do this. Our military is not law enforcement here. Yet Trump wants it to be. Donald Trump is trying to normalize images like that. Donald Trump, like everything else Trump does, like everything else Trump touches, every illegal, unlawful, corrupt, ignorant, dishonest, cruel, authoritarian thing Trump does and says, and he's successful at getting us to normalize every illegal, lawless, corrupt, ignorant, authoritarian, dishonest thing he says. He wants us to do the same here. Donald Trump wants the average American to look at that scene out of Washington, D.C., our military patrolling the streets of D.C., military vehicles roaming the streets of D.C. Trump wants the average American to say, no big deal, okay. Hey, no big deal. Just like Trump tells a lie every time he opens his mouth, and the average American now says, no big deal. It must be a big deal. We cannot normalize it. We cannot accept it. Washington, D.C.'s Attorney General, Washington, D.C.'s city attorney, the city of Washington, D.C. filed suit this morning against the Trump administration for trying to revoke home rule, for basically trying to take over law enforcement in D.C. Washington, D.C. now taking the Trump administration to court. We can't allow it. We can't allow it in Los Angeles. We can't allow it in Chicago. We can't allow it in Washington, D.C. And if we just sit and see images like that and say no big deal, then it's going to happen in Chicago and New York, because Trump wants it to happen in cities, in blue cities and states all over this country by next year. If we don't raise a fucking fuss over what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now, and there is no emergency. It's all a lie. Even if there was an emergency, we don't put our military on our streets to engage in law enforcement, not in this free country, but there is no emergency. But Trump's banking on all of us just sort of shrugging our shoulders. Joe, that's Trump, looking the other way, getting on with our lives. And then you're going to wake up in a week or a month or two, and there'll be Marines in Chicago, the south side of Chicago. There'll be Marines in Boston. There'll be American military by the time the 2026 elections hit in every blue city in this country. It's got to be stopped now. The Trump administration, the Trump administration needs to be taken to court immediately, and they are in Washington, D.C. But we, the American people, need to say no. We, the American people, need to stand in front of these fucking tanks and say no. We got to raise a stink about it. Can't happen here. Hey, I had an amazing conversation earlier in the week with one of my favorite young people in America. She's Rachel Janfaza. She's the founder of the Up and Up, a great site for all things Gen Z. You know me, I'm an old fart. I'm an old dark Irishman, and I worry about this country. The only reason I have a little bit of hope is when I talk to people like Rachel, and I talk to Gen Z, and I get and understand more the younger generation and how they can help save this country. Rachel and I got together this week to talk about, I wanted an update on where is Gen Z right now, 7 months into Trump. Where are they politically? What are they thinking about? What do they care about? It was a really cool, fun, engaging conversation. Here it is.
Hi, thank you so much, Joe, for joining me. I'm so excited to chat with you again today.
Rachel, I am your biggest fan. I mean that. So whenever I can actually be on with you, I love it. Thank you.
I'm so excited. And thank you, everyone who's joining. We're going to have a great conversation about some of the biggest questions right now about young voters. So if you have any questions, or once we get started, please feel free to send them our way. We would love to hear from you.
Hey, Rachel, can I say one thing that I'll probably say 3 or 4 times?
Yeah.
Everybody who's listening right now, come on in, come on in, come on in. If you are subscribed to me and you're not yet subscribed to Rachel Janfanza, I'm going to come kick your butt. Subscribe to Rachel. She is fascinating, and she's a fascinating follow. Subscribe to Rachel.
Thank you so much, Joe. You're the most generous. I really appreciate it. And if anyone here is on my channel but not Joe's, please subscribe to him too. We're really excited to have this conversation today. One second. I'm just gonna... Okay, there we go. So, Joe, I'm curious. You have a massive community of people you're in touch with all the time. And I'm wondering if any questions have surfaced from them about young voters, and if they have any qualms, curiosity about how young people are feeling right now. Has anything come up in your conversations or in your comments? And if so, what are people curious about?
are young people motivated right now? Have they checked out, Rachel? I do a lot of protesting and I go to a lot of rallies, and I got to tell you, you and I know most of the folks I see who seem to be engaged, middle and older white folk like me. And the question I'm constantly getting from them is, Joe, where are young people? Are they, it's weird. Like, are a lot of them, are more of them than we think liking what Trump's doing? I'm hearing more and more of that.
Yeah.
Or are they so pissed off that they've like just checked out? I
Yeah.
hear a lot of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think from what I'm hearing, and I've been doing a lot of listening sessions over the past few weeks, which is really when they're virtual. So I'm able to talk to people from across the country and give people a chance to raise their concerns on any given issue. There's been a lot of talk. I've heard from people as young as 11 years old, and I've written a bit about this the past couple of weeks, who keep referencing just like the way that things are going in the country right now as this like vague terminology
Yeah.
about like constant chaos that they've grown up with. And I think that it's sort of two things. One, it's numbing when there's just so much chaos, wherever you align on the ideological spectrum, there's always something that people are complaining about. So I think at the same time, like while there's so much going on and there's so much that they feel is really intense, it also has that numbing effect where it's like, they either don't know how to be effective with their
Yeah.
complaints and concerns, because I think also there's this divide in the older members of Gen Z and the younger members of Gen Z, where what I call Gen Z 1.0, which I'm on in that cohort, which is the older cusp of Gen Z, there was a lot of activism during the first Trump era that didn't lead to the results that people wanted. And so now I think a lot of people are wondering, what's the point of protesting if it doesn't seem to make the difference that they perhaps wanted it to?
Yeah.
So that's one part of it. And then the other part is, I think people just feel really politically lost and homeless and
Mhm.
feeling like there's not it's not that they necessarily, especially in recent weeks, I haven't heard much of an appetite except from like super loyal Trump voters. The people who were more in the middle, who felt kind of like drawn towards Trump during the election, but weren't necessarily obsessed with him, but just felt that he would maybe make their lives better in the immediate than perhaps at the time they thought Kamala Harris would. Those types of people, I think now are just kind of feeling like lost in the middle, where there's no leader who's speaking directly to them about the issues that impact their lives on the daily basis. And so I think they don't really know who to turn to or where to get involved politically, because they don't hear anyone speaking to them.
And Rachel, I'm asked that a lot by my fellow old folk. Like, what do Joe, like a woman this weekend asked me at a rally, what does the average 18-year-old care about right now? Like, what are the issues that the average 18-year-old, she threw that age out at me, cares about? And I struggle to answer that. If I were to ask you that, my expert, what does the average 18-year-old care about right now?
I think this often is seen as something that only older voters care about, but it really is important for young people too, maybe even more so as they're setting up their lives and their futures, is the economy. And I know, of course, it's always the economy, but young people are really feeling like the job market isn't necessarily, that they're scared. I did a class of 2025 landscape report, and there's just a lot of fear, anxiety about ability to get a job, about ability to afford life. The cost of rent, the cost of living in general are all skyrocketing, and it's leaving young people feeling really anxious, overwhelmed, and this even permeates, it's political, but at the same time it's affecting everything. It's even affecting how young people are dating. 50% of Gen
Ah,
Z, according to this Bank of America better money habits study that came out at the end of July, showed that 50% of Gen Zers are spending $0 a month on dates.
what?
And yeah,
What?
yeah, yeah. Because they don't see where they don't see a return on their investment really, for a number of reasons, which we could get into. But that just goes to show that the number one issue is the economy. They're not spending money. They're not. Certainly, and I have done a lot on spending habits. I do hear that young people are wanting to spend money to be with their friends or on experiences, travel, things that kind of last beyond the initial purchase. But
Yeah.
they're feeling really strapped for cash and worried about setting themselves up for the future. And this is related to a conversation about AI and the way that AI is changing the job market. And there's a lot of fear and hesitation about young people worrying that the degree that they may be studying to get, that they're spending a lot of money on to get, might be worthless the moment they get it because of the way that AI is changing every single industry.
Rachel, I always adore speaking with you because I find it so interesting,
Thank
and
you so much.
I learn so much. Like if someone asks, like you said something a few minutes ago, that the average Gen Z or the average young person is looking for leadership and they don't see it. If somebody like we're looking for our next Lincoln or our next whoever, like if somebody asked me my age that question, what am I looking for? I'm looking for someone to save our damn democracy, to preserve the rule of law, and eventually heal the divide in this country.
Yeah.
Like, that's an easy one for someone like me to answer. How would your cohort answer that question? You're looking for your great leader to do what? To do what for you?
To deliver on the bottom line for them. I think that is something that comes up a lot. Young people want someone who's going to make their life better. And I think this has changed. I think, I talk about the split between Gen Z 1.0 and Gen Z 2.0 and how there have been really different life experiences, whether you're on the older cusp or the younger cusp of Gen Z, in part because of COVID and social media. But as a result of that, I think that the worldview has shifted. Gen Z 1.0 was far more idealistic, was very on the forefront of these social justice movements where they really wanted leaders who were looking out for minorities, for everyone's rights. And I think to a
And
group,
we're talking about the older Gen Zers.
yes, the older
Okay.
Gen Z. And to a degree that still exists. And empathy is a core Gen Z value across the board. And I think that's also in large part because of social media, because of the proximity, you're able to see the way other people live their lives and see experiences that differ from your own. And yet, I think because of inflation, because of the rising cost of living, because of all of these prices that just continue to increase, young people are really looking for an economic leader, for someone who is
Wow.
creating a message for them about prosperity and opportunity in the future. And I think in part, when you think about Trump and the inroads that he made with young people in 2024, his whole thing was about making America great again. And that resonated with people who are looking for something that's better than the current.
So
But
then, would that then hold, Rach, then for some of those voters, Trump hasn't delivered on that
right.
aspect yet, and his tariffs could really fuck that up.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about whether or not this generation's politics will just become reactionary.
Yeah.
In part because of social media. I think it just speeds everything up. And so I do wonder if, it's a little too early to tell, but I do wonder if it's going to keep flip-flopping back and forth, where it's like, unless a politician is able to deliver, as I said, on those promises that were made, which I think we could see that happen. I think that would be successful. But if they don't deliver, I do think that it's always going to be this desire of something else, something different, because also our generation is really used to instant gratification.
Yeah.
We can get, and it's not even in terms of just likes on social media. We can get food delivered within 5 minutes. You can have a task rabbit come and set something up for you in 5 minutes. Like, you can always get something to your door super quickly. And as a result, I think we're used to change happening quickly, but in politics, it doesn't necessarily work that way. And politicians promise a lot of things and then don't necessarily deliver on those things. And I think that's really frustrating to a generation that's used to that happening quickly. But I'm really curious, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you just on that, like Mamdani in New York City, maybe there's great appeal for young people with him. He talks about issues like affordability and so on.
Totally. I mean, the number one thing on his website before the primary in New York was that that New York City was too expensive. Like
Yeah,
that was the main thing on his website. And I think that was for a lot of people all they needed to hear. And was part of why he resonated so much with young people. And in a way, so much of Mamdani's rhetoric and Trump's rhetoric is actually really
yeah,
similar.
yeah. So
And that's,
Rachel,
yeah.
if for let me stupidly generalize and slap me. Um, is it fair to say then young people, when it comes to saving democracy or the price of eggs, whatever, most of Gen Z would say, Joe, I love you, but damn it, the price of eggs and the ba 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 ba.
Yep. I think also because if you think about it, and granted, there's a lot of evidence of norms that have been broken, um, and there's area for concern with regard to democratic norms. At the same time, I think a lot of young people feel like, well, we still had a democratic election in the last election cycle. We're all still here. There's been, every election for a member of Gen Z, they've been told this is the most important election of your lifetime, and the results are going to change the course of history. And then life goes on.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're like, I think they're not necessarily seeing it in that same way because for them this is normal. Trump has been on the ballot for every election in which Gen Z has been eligible to vote. And so this is just what it is.
I mean, by the way, what you just said there, Rachel, everybody my age should understand. Trump has been on the ballot for every election Gen Z has voted in. Wow.
Yep. And whether or not whether or not, no matter where they stand on the ideological spectrum, I think so much of the change that has happened during the Trump era 1.0 and 2.0 is just normalized for them because that's all they know. But I'm curious, like from your perspective, how how you've seen young voters over time shift in their priorities. Like when I say that young people are prioritizing the economy and want someone to deliver on their bottom line, is that different than what you saw, let's say, like even 20 years ago?
Oh my God, Rachel, it's different than what I saw when I ran for Congress 12 years ago. When I ran for Congress 12 years ago, when I ran against Trump, the stupidest thing I did in the 2020 Republican primary, young people were mostly about social justice issues, fairness issues, equality, freedom. I'm in control of my body. I should be able to say whatever I want. Income inequality is a problem. There were issues that were bigger and more important than their own.
Yeah.
I think this is common with a lot of age groups, but I've noticed, and it jives with what you're saying, when I talk to young people now, it is much more centered on them and their lives, primarily economic. That's completely different. I don't know what that means, but that's different.
I mean, I wonder, there's a few things that I feel like could be part of the calculus of why that has shifted. I think social media has individualized, and it's ironic because social media shows you everyone else's experience, but then it also makes you think about your own individual experience so much more. And so I wonder if sort of that has played a role in this. Um, I,
What about just
I
being
don't know.
disillusioned? Like
Yeah.
when I campaigned for Kamala Harris last year, former Tea Party guy campaigning for Kamala Harris. How fucking crazy. But now I'm a Democrat. 2 months ago, I became a Democrat, Rachel. But when I campaigned for her last year, I got a lot of that from young people, just disillusioned.
Yep.
Joe, they all suck. They didn't deliver. Even Obama
Yep.
didn't deliver, Joe. A lot of that.
Yep. I think so. I'm seeing also in the comment section here that some people are saying that young people aren't paying enough attention. That's not true. I think this generation is hyper aware. They're getting a stream of ping pong of breaking news alerts or social media alerts every 5 seconds in a device in their pocket or in their phone at literally all time. And they're having current events streamed to them in real time from around the world. They're paying attention. They know what's going on. Like you just said, the sheer amount of chaos and also the fact that you don't know who you can trust online. And there's a lot of just mis and disinformation that young people are really hyper aware of. And so, A, they don't know who to trust. B, there's so much constant chaos going on at all times that they're like, it is overwhelming. It is so much. And they watch their older cousins, siblings, whomever in that older cusp of Gen Z that you were discussing when you ran 12 years ago, and the type of people who were on the forefront of those social justice movements. And they those, you might have protested for racial justice or protested for during the March for Our Lives against school shootings and gun violence, and school shootings and gun violence and mass shootings still persist. And so people are like, why am I doing this? Why am I spending so much time when it doesn't make any difference? There's so much that feels broken. And I actually just wrote about this yesterday about how for Gen Z 1.0, the fact that they were able to say things felt broken means that there was a time when it did feel intact.
Yeah.
There was a point of reference that they could point to of like, oh, things have changed. But for Gen Z 2.0 and Gen
Done.
Alpha, this is the only point of reference. And so Gen Z 1.0 might have been called snowflakes. Gen Z 2.0 and Gen Alpha, they have a shield of armor. And that resilience isn't necessarily something to praise either.
Oh, Rachel, I think that's a fascinating topic. So I've always been a free speech absolutist. And I've always felt you can say, hate speech is protected. You can offend people. I've noticed a change with young people when I would purposely engage in uncomfortable, offensive speak 10, 15, 20 years ago. It was easy to offend young people.
Hmm.
They would shirk from it. And I remember there'd be polls that young people in America believe that hate speech should be outlawed, which is anathema to me. I wonder, though, if that's the same with Gen Z 2.0. I wonder if they're as easily bothered by hate speech or offensive speech.
It's a really good question. I think that there's been a lot of conversation about freedom of speech on college campuses in particular over the past few years,
Yeah.
in part during the protests over the war between Israel and Hamas. And this was a top priority. And there were a lot of young people in that Gen Z 2.0 cohort who I heard from who actually said that they voted for President Trump because he
Yeah.
prioritized free speech. I also have heard from some young voters, and there's one in particular who I've written about, who said that that is one of her biggest regrets in voting for Trump, was that she actually doesn't believe anymore that he is protecting free speech or prioritizing
He's
free
not. Yeah.
So I do think that that has really been an important trait, an important political issue for young people. I just want to ask you like one more theme to talk about before we
By
wrap
the
up.
way, and I have one more question for you, but you go
Yeah.
first.
Okay. So I know you talk a lot about religion, and this is something that I'm really curious about. And I've heard from a lot of young people that religion is something that they are prioritizing. Their faith is something that's a huge part of their identity. But I think when we talk about religious voters, we often assume that they're all conservative. And I haven't found that to be the case. And I'm curious if you see this to be true across generations as well, and sort of just the role that you see religion playing into politics and sort of some of the misconceptions that might exist about what it means to be a religious voter.
I think you're right, Rachel. Again, across generations, we assume that the right is more religious. The distinction I'd make in my observations and conversations with people across generations is that the right is much more prone to be public about their religion, public about their faith, public about their religiosity. Whereas I think the left in general is much less hesitant to, proudly lead with that or show that. And it's analogous to like the flag and patriotism. It's always I mean, it's absurd now because MAGA, like, they sleep with the flag. But back in the day, the right was always a little more proud about flying the flag, and the left was a little more hesitant. I've always seen the same thing with religion. And I see it with younger people as well. When I talk to younger people, it's generally, Rachel, younger people on the right who will engage and talk about their religion more, much more than I find younger people on the left. How about you?
I mean, I'm seeing it on both sides. I'm seeing it differently, but I think there's also a lot of politically homeless young people who identify as people of faith, and I think oftentimes that
Yeah.
like becomes the thing that they lean into more because it is seen as a community that is accepting, and when politics might not be. But when it comes to sort of the misconceptions, I think there's a lot of talk about young people leaning into religion, especially young men leaning into religion. And um, I have not, in my experience, found it to be that all religious young people are in one party. I think it's really, there's a varied political experience. Um,
Would you say
and
that most religious young men tend to be right of center, or the ones that show it?
the ones that show it, honestly, I'm really starting to see more young people who identify on the left or in the middle tell me that faith is something that's really important to them, and they're wearing cross necklaces and who are
Wow.
talking about going to the to synagogue. And it's also not just about Christianity too. I
Yeah.
think religion, all religions. But I do see this generation prioritizing religion as a community that they feel accepted into regardless of their party ID. I don't know the hard data on this exactly, but I am seeing this in my anecdotal qualitative research.
Um, if I were to travel the country, and in every city and town in this country, I put together 200 to 300 young people in an audience, and they had to show up, and they had to engage with me for an hour and a half, and obviously I'd listen. But if I were to do that, and you were my chief advisor as I traveled the country to speak to Gen Z 1, Gen Z 2,
Yeah.
what would be your fucking marching orders? Like, you'd say, Joe, the purpose of this tour is, here's what I think you should tell them, engage with them on. What would you focus on?
This is such a good question. I love it. I also think you should do this, and I'm
You,
happy to
by the
be.
way, Rachel, I want to do it. You don't have to answer now. And if I do it, you're my blanket. You're my advisor and my blanket. But
Uh,
continue.
I think it's key. You actually already answered the question yourself. You said I would be there to listen. And
Yeah.
I think just the fact that someone is going there to listen to them and wants to hear their concerns in a way that is not super inflammatory, is
Yeah.
not meant to be a gotcha, is not meant to be condescending, like that is key. A lot of young people, especially when it comes to politics, feel like they're not being heard, they're not
Yeah.
being taken seriously, or that they're told that they aren't paying attention when they know that they are. And they just want someone who's willing to acknowledge that and have the conversation with them.
Oh my God, Rach, if I do this, you're right there. You are
Let's
right there. You're
let's do
my
it.
security blanket. You're my everything. Hey, my last quick question, then we can
Yeah.
be done. This is fun. Did you say at the beginning that young people are not dating as much? Did I mishear that?
So they're not spending as much money on dates.
Okay.
And also, I mean, there has been a lot of talk this summer about a sex session, like
Yeah.
this idea that young people are having less sex. And a reporter named Carter Sherman wrote a book on this
Yep.
summer. So I recommend everyone check that out. And I did a Q&A with her if you want to read it on
Yeah.
yeah. I think that this is a multifaceted issue, in part because there is a gender gap between young people. We also
Yeah.
see declining birth rates, and that's the gender gap
Hmm.
plays into this too. I think it's a few things. It's the gender gap. I'm hearing a lot recently about this. Um, what's the point? Like they don't
Yeah.
see a return on their investment. I mentioned that earlier, and so
Yeah.
I think that's part of it too. And then also, like we talked about, if the economy is the number one issue for young people and they're feeling really scared for the future, they have to worry about them. This goes back to the politics issue. They
Yeah.
have to worry. They're worrying about themselves before they can think about another person.
This will be the last thing I say, Rach, and then it's your live. You got the final word. What am I doing? I adore you, and I want everyone who's not yet subscribed to Rachel, please subscribe. I'm a dark Irishman. I think our democracy is falling. The only reason I have any hope is because of Rachel and the young folks that she's engaging with. I mean that.
Well, you're extremely kind. I love listening to you. I love learning from you and hearing from your experience. And also, I'm just so in awe of this community that you've built. So I'm really grateful to get to be a part of it. And I really do hope that you do this tour of college campuses or of community centers. I would love to come with you. And I think it's just so important that people like you and those in your community are listening to the concerns of young people. So that's what I'm trying to do. And hopefully we can keep doing this. But thank you so much for coming on with me today. And thanks everyone for being here.
Thanks, Rachel. You rock. Thanks.
Awesome. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow The Social Contract with Joe Walsh on